Hello and welcome to the episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, December 28th. Hope everybody's having a day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Wednesday, December 28th here today, coming off of a wild night last night in the world of sports. If you're a New York Knicks fan today, you're feeling very disappointed as the Knicks dropped their fourth straight, and in those four games, they've had leads late in all those four games and have not been able to hold on. And last night, they broke a record, actually. Well, Luka Doncic, first of all, had an amazing game. I mean, a phenomenal night. What a night for him. 60-point triple-double. A historic night and a night that many Mavericks fans won't forget. Luka Doncic won't forget, but if you're a Knicks fan, you want to forget after what went down last night. Rangers took a loss last night as well as the Capitals shut them out. A very poor performance from the Rangers. Couple calls get overturned, a couple things didn't go their way, but all in all, just a really poor performance from the New York Rangers. So it was a tough night last night. Islanders did get the win over the Penguins, so all in all, it was a tough night for New York sports outside of the Islanders winning because the Rangers, lose in 4-0, get shut out at home, and then the Knicks, lose a heartbreaker, on the road where they're up 9 with less than 35 seconds to go, and the stat going around is what is it? I think teams going into that up 9 with 35 seconds to go. Teams were 0 and 13th out, or teams that were trailing by 9 with 35 seconds or less to go in a game, were like 13,884. So now they're 1 and 13,884, whatever you want to say it. So a crazy game last night. Between the Knicks and the Mavericks. Nets will be back tonight. Both hockey teams will have the night off, and the Knicks will also have a much-needed day off after the tough loss last night. So Nets in Atlanta against the Hawks, 7:30 Eastern tonight, as they will look to pick up their 10th straight win in a row. So, topics for today's podcast, got a lot to get into here on this Wednesday, middle of the week, getting closer and closer to the weekend, and getting closer and closer to Jets, Seahawks, Giants, Colts. So a lot to look forward to coming up here within the coming days. Kentucky also on tonight. They begin SEC play against Missouri, but we're going to get into J.J. Watt. We're going to start with him today. He is retired. He announced yesterday on his Twitter that his last home game was against the Buccaneers on Sunday night. He is going to retire after the season's over. He's got 2 games left, and he will retire after those 2 games, and his legendary career, will come to an end. By far a first ballot Hall of Famer. And by far a legend in Houston Texans legend, an NFL legend, and a guy that will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. We'll get into some of his numbers, some of his crazy stats. Look back on his 2014 season, which was ridiculous, crazy, insane, any word you want to use to describe it. We'll get into all that. And we're also going to get into a little bit of Daniel Jones. I touched a little bit on him on Monday. I've talked a little bit about him, obviously, throughout the year. We've talked a lot about the Giants, talked a lot about the Jets. But I want to really take a deeper dive into Daniel Jones and really just show the type of season he's had and why he has deserved a second contract with the New York Giants, and why he seems like he is entering that stage of he is the guy for the New York Giants after what he's done this season with virtually nothing around him outside of Saquon Barkley. So we'll get into that as well. But with all that being said, we'll start with J.J. Watt. Then we got to get to Daniel Jones. A lot on tap. This is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get right into it. So, NFL legend yesterday, J.J. Watt, announced on his Twitter account that he is going to be retiring after the NFL season. He played his last home game on Sunday. Obviously, they took the tough loss in overtime to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He will close out his career with 2 road games. This week, they'll be on the road against Atlanta, and then they'll be on the road to close out the season, Week 18, against the Niners to close things out and close out his NFL career. And I'll start off with this. J.J. Watt is an amazing player. He will go down as one of the greatest of all time. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. You can make the argument he is one of the GOATs at his position, obviously at the defensive end spot, and what he did throughout his career was simply remarkable. Some of the things that he has done, I mean, his time obviously with Houston and now with Arizona, he is great. And we always talk about legends in sports, right? Whatever sport you always talk about any sport. Right? There's always those legends. J.J. Watt is going to go down as one of the greatest defensive players of all time. He will go up there with the Lawrence Taylors of the world. He will go up there. His name will obviously be up there as well. Even the the Randalls of the world, who obviously was a former edge rusher or a former defensive player as well. So he's going to go up there with a lot of all-time greats. John Randall of the Vikings. He will go up there with him. He'll go up there with the Strahans of the world. All of those different guys, he is going to go up there, and he's going to be in that conversation with all those players. And you can make the argument that J.J. Watt, this generation, was the best player we've seen at his position since Lawrence Taylor, obviously back in the day with the New York Giants. And he was phenomenal. Obviously, face of the franchise with Houston, face of the franchise, with the Texans for all those years. Got drafted back in 2011 with the Texans out of Wisconsin, and right from that point made his mark on the NFL. Then went to Arizona. And I'll tell you what, I've said this. I love J.J. Watt. I've been a huge fan of J.J. Watt for a very long time now, even with him being on the Texans. I've always enjoyed watching his mic'd up videos and all that stuff. But I will tell you something about J.J. Watt. Even as his career came to a kind of started winding down towards the end of his time in Houston and towards the end of his time in Arizona, he still makes an impact. Like this season, he's tied for 16th in the NFL with 9.5 sacks. He's still up there as a solid defensive end type player where he's still playing at a solid level even at 33 years old and at nearing the tail end of his career in his 11th season, right? He still is, one of those solid pass rushers in the league, which just shows you how dominant he's been for so long. And, we talk about a lot of times, about historic seasons from certain players. He had an historic season in 2014. So let's go into his season in 2014. We're going to take a look here and just give you some of the numbers. So this is from Field Yates, who does a great job covering the NFL. So he tweeted this out yesterday, some of the numbers coming from his 2014 season. So in 2014, he had 20.5 sacks that led the NFL. He had 29 tackles for loss that led the NFL. He had 4 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, 1 return for a touchdown. So right there, 4 forced fumble, 5 fumble recoveries, 1 return for a touchdown. Unbelievable, insane. He had an interception, which got returned for an 80-yard touchdown, so a pick 6. He was NFL Defensive Player of the Year, All-Pro, and on top of all that, he made an impact on the offensive side of the ball. He had 3 touchdown catches, as if you remember, back in 2014, the Texans lined him up at times at tight end, and they'll put him in the red zone about the 5-yard line, have him run like a little slant or a route, towards the corner of the end zone. They'll throw it up to him, and he'd catch it, and he had 3 touchdown catches. So not only was he making an impact on the defensive side of the ball, he was dominant on the offensive side of the ball with 3 touchdown catches of his own. He also, again, you bring up some legends. Lawrence Taylor, obviously, is one of the greatest defensive players of all time. Aaron Donald, another guy, when he is all said and done, he'll go down as one of the greatest of all time. Again, as I mentioned, even Jason Taylor with the Dolphins, and again, John Randall with the Vikings, Strahan, so many dominant defensive players over the years. I'm not even naming all of them. There's so many. But, a lot of times people talk about LT kind of being at the top. J.J. Watt is the only defensive player ever, again, over Strahan, over Taylor, none of those guys ever did it, to have 2 20+ sack seasons. He had 20.5 sacks in 2012, and as I mentioned in 2014, he had 20.5 sacks. And that range, those years from 2012 to 2015 was where he was most dominant. He had 20.5 sacks in 2012, 10.5 in 2013, 20.5 in 2014, 2015 he had 17.5. Then he was banged up a little bit injuries, and then again in 2018 he had 16 sacks. And in the rest of this season again, he's on his way to maybe having another double-digit sack season. To be in your last year in your NFL career and possibly put up 10 sacks, obviously he's got 2 more games to do. He just needs a half a sack to get to 10. As I just mentioned, he's at 9.5 right now. To be able to do that at this stage in his career is pretty remarkable. And on his career, 111.5 sacks, 27 forced fumbles, 17 fumble recoveries, 136 assists, 444 solo tackles, 580 total tackles, and 149 games played in his career. The numbers just jump off the board. And again, he not only was good on the field, very good off the field. I've never obviously personally met J.J. Watt. I'm not that close to him. But, you could even listen to the mic'd up videos of him where, he'd be all fired up. And in one of the press conferences that he actually had, which was back in, I think it was the 2020 season when the Texans were awful. It was his final year there. Texans were really bad. It was Watson's final year there, all that stuff. Like, they were a mess. And that one press conference he had where he was just, upset, and he was labeling all the things about, what putting in the work and how the fans, deserve better and all that stuff. That just shows you the type of leader he was. So not only on the field, but also off the field. And again, he definitely will go down as one of the greatest of all time, and without a doubt is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I was a little surprised to see the news come across yesterday. I was surprised. Especially to announce it now. I thought, if anything, he'd announce it later in the year. And as we all know, he had some heart issues earlier this season too, which could have, possibly, kind of pushed some of the stuff where he's gone to the point where he's got to hang up the cleats. But, he'll go down as one of the greatest. And then, Donald, another guy that will go down as one of the greatest. A lot of really good pass rushers are, starting near the tail end of their career. I mean, Donald's not nearing the tail end, I would say, but he's a guy, Aaron Donald, he kind of hinted last year that he might retire soon within the next couple years. And then the next generation of pass rushers are kind of starting to come up here where you're seeing some, great players like, I'm not saying Quinton Williams is all-time great, but, guys like Chris Jones, guys like Quinton Williams, guys that are obviously interior defensive players, but guys that will definitely, if they continue to do what they do in their career, will also, be up there with some of the best. But J.J. Watt is by far one of the best to do it. And some of the numbers he put up, this is a guy, that's another thing too. These aren't just good numbers. These are numbers that we haven't seen a player put up since the Lawrence Taylor days. Lawrence Taylor was insane. Unbelievable. We haven't seen players put up what J.J. Watt put up since those days. And that just shows you how great of a career he had and how dominant he was throughout his NFL career. Just simply dominant. So another thing I want to go through here, I want to just read through some of the sack leaders of all times. Now, I know, obviously, J.J. Watt is not quite up there with sack leaders of all time, but I do just want to read through them anyway. So Bruce Smith has the most sacks of all time. He has 200. Reggie White's behind him at 198. Kevin Green at 160. Julius Peppers at 159.5. 159.5. Chris Dolman, Strahan's up there. Jason Taylor, as I mentioned, up there. Terrell Suggs is actually up there. DeMarcus Ware is up there. John Randall, John Abraham, LT, Von Miller. Obviously, he's still going. He's another guy, too, that's going to go down as one of the greatest. He ranks 19th all-time sacks. He has 123.5. He's a guy that's, again, obviously days with Denver, L.A., and now with the Bills, obviously tore his ACL, so he needs season-ending surgery. But he's another guy that, without doubt, Jared Allen, who obviously had many of those good seasons with the Vikings as well. He had 136. A lot of really good all-time pass rushers. And the one thing that J.J. Watt deserved, he deserved a Super Bowl. And back when the Texans blew that 24-0 lead, that was awful. Because if they were they were beating the Chiefs 24-0, and they had an opportunity to get to the AFC Championship game, and they blew the 24-0 lead. And Bill O'Brien was a big part of that. You obviously never know what happens there, but J.J. Watt also entered that category of greatest players to possibly not win a Super Bowl. There's some great. He definitely deserved to win a Super Bowl, and the front office of the Texans, the coaching of the Texans, kind of hurt him in a way. I always go back to Rangers with Henrik Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist was great. He never won a Stanley Cup, and part of that was because there wasn't always the best team around him. The defense in front of Henrik Lundqvist was never always. The defense was solid in front of him, but towards the end of his career, obviously they entered the rebuild, and it was tough. They just could never give him a cup. There wasn't always enough offense either. Lundqvist sometimes had to go out there and, during that Kings series back in 2013, not try to get off topic, but Henrik Lundqvist is another guy, too, that definitely deserved the championship. There's a lot of guys that, end their careers and don't win championships, and it's obviously really, really, really tough. But J.J. Watt's an all-time great, and will go down as one of the greatest, and is definitely a Texans legend, NFL legend. He will retire at the end of the season at 33 years old. And as I mentioned, he played 21 games with the Cardinals. He had 10.5 sacks in the 2 seasons he's played with the Cardinals. And as I mentioned, this season, this is the most sacks he's had in a year since 2018. So he's actually having a pretty solid year considering this is his final year of his NFL career, and he's getting up there in age, obviously, at 33. But a phenomenal career for J.J. Watt as he'll hang up the cleats at the end of this season. All right, so now we move on from J.J. Watt, and we get to Daniel Jones is going to be our next topic here. So, obviously, you enter the season as a New York Giants fan, and you kind of you hope for the best, expect the worst. We all went into this year with the New York Giants saying, how they'll have to, they're kind of where the Jets were last season. That was kind of the mindset at the beginning of the season where they were where the Jets were last season. They're going to, tear it apart, see what pieces fit, see what pieces don't fit. Then you go into this upcoming offseason. You might win 5-6 games, but you go into this upcoming offseason. You hopefully have your answer at quarterback, and you hopefully, obviously, you trust the coach. No matter what, unless if the wheels really fell off, I think we would all agree, no matter what happens this season, Brian Dable is going to get another year. Him and Joe Schoen, because it was their first year. They have to undo everything that Gettleman did. Gettleman was a complete train wreck. They have to undo everything that he did, and then this offseason they would address it. And you went into this season with the New York Giants, and everybody was saying, with the Giants, you want to know two things. You want to know one big thing coming out of the end of this season. What is Daniel Jones? Is he the guy? Is he not the guy? Do you want to move on from him? What do you want to do? And I will tell you this. I think there was definitely some fans out there, and I was one of them. I'm not obviously a Giants fan, but I was one of the NFL fans. I was one of the people talking about the Giants, obviously, on this podcast. I've been very vocal about Daniel Jones not being the guy with the New York Giants. What I've seen in his first 3 years in the NFL in 2019, 2020, and again in 2021, I actually saw him regress, not get better. His turnovers were an issue. And then all of a sudden, just like that, a flip has switched, and he has completely changed for the better. And he is having the best year I think he's having personally. You might look at the numbers and say, oh, well, he threw 24 touchdowns in 2019. He's only thrown 13. But he is having the most complimentary, just quarterback, best season, playing within the offense, doing his job, smart decision-making year of his career. He has definitely made that fourth-year jump under Brian Dable. And you went into this season with the New York Giants. And the New York Giants, they need one win to get in. They either need to beat the Colts this week, on which they should. The Colts are a train wreck. They're a train wreck. If the Giants don't beat the Colts, that's bad. The Colts are a train wreck. Giants should beat them. If they don't beat the Colts, they'll get a chance against the Eagles, which is tough. It will be on the road. I don't so much like their chances there. Giants got to beat the Colts. In my opinion, it's a must-win. You don't want to go into the final week of the season against Philly with a win-you're-in type scenario. Now, they could have some other things happen where other teams lose, but the easiest way is just they win no matter what else happens. If the Giants win, they're into the playoffs, and that's the bottom line. So you went into this season, and obviously, again, the goal is, the hope is, let's make the playoffs, let's do this, let's do that. But the hope is, the realistic expectation is to go into the season and come out of the year knowing who your quarterback is. Is it Daniel Jones? Or if he has a bad year, to get rid of him. You're either going to draft another guy, bring in somebody else, however the Giants want to attack that. But what Daniel Jones has done this year has proven and has given the Giants every bit of evidence that they need to show he is the guy moving forward. And he is doing this with virtually no weapons whatsoever. And the Giants have given Daniel Jones the right head coach. They've given him the right head coach, the right offensive system. They've given him all the right pieces. And he is now, they've given the right head coach. They've given him the right system. They haven't given him the talent just yet. But you can already see the strides he is making just by the coaching, just by the scheme, just by the overall, the difference the organization is right now overall. This organization was a mess a year ago under Joe Judge. He had 2 years under Joe Judge. 2 seasons he had under Joe Judge. A complete train wreck those 2 years were. And you have seen now what Brian Dable has done. And a lot of people are acting, a lot of people are like, oh, what if this is just a one-year thing with Daniel Jones? Is he really the guy? And obviously, again, when you look at the numbers, he has 13 touchdowns. He has 3,028 yards. He has a QBR of 56.8. What I will tell you about those numbers is he's 15th in yards in the NFL. He is tied for second least interception in the NFL. He only has 5. He hasn't turned the ball over much. A big issue with Daniel Jones early in his career was the fumbling, the interceptions, the turnovers. He would turn the ball over way too much. This season, he hasn't done that. And he's 11th in the NFL in QBR with 56.8. So he's top. You can make the argument in terms of QBR, he's top 10 right now. He's on the outside looking in. But a lot of times QBR is a big quarterback stat that we look at. He's 11th. So he's up there within the top 12, top 10 range of all quarterbacks with the with QBR. 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, turnovers have dropped. Yards have went up. This is the most yards he's ever had in a season, 3,028, and he's got 2 more games to go. You would assume he probably gets to maybe 3,250-ish, 3,300-ish. With 2 games left, let's say he gets like 150, maybe a 200-yard game. You assume he's probably around 3,350, 3,400 to end the year, assuming he gets about 300 yards the next 2 games, which is definitely possible. He'll probably crack 1,300 or 3,300 yards this season, which will probably get him around 15. He's solid. He's a solid NFL quarterback, and you give him talent. The receivers that he is working with, let me tell you the receivers that he threw to against the Vikings. Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, I will admit, is actually playing well. He was with Buffalo for a little bit, and I'll tell you this, he fits the system. He knows Dable. Dable likes him. He might actually be a diamond in the rough that they found. He might be one of those guys where you pick up off the side of the street, you take a flyer on him, he turns out to be a solid receiver. He might actually, and he's younger too. He's a guy, he's only 24 years old, right? He's only 24 years old. He's only played, this season, he played 2 games with the Bills, and now he's on the Giants. So he's a guy that Dable obviously knows from Buffalo, and obviously a guy that, the Giants definitely feel that can make an impact. He's a young receiver. So I feel like he could definitely be a guy that maybe could be the answer long term. I'm not saying he's going to be your number 1 guy, but could he be a guy that's a number 3 option? Yeah, it's possible. Darius Slayton, Saquon, and Daniel Bellinger. I mean, first of all, Daniel Bellinger, tight end. They're probably going to look to get a new tight end in the offseason. Okay, Bellinger's not terrible, but again, we're talking about NFL roster. We're talking about a team that you're going to need more talent. Daniel Bellinger is not going to cut it. Okay, so you're looking at Richie James stinks. And again, a lot of these Daniel Jones passes that he's throwing, a lot of these passes are being dropped, a lot of them, by Richie James and these other receivers. So you can even make the argument with better receivers, he'd have more touchdowns and he'd have a better completion percentage. And his completion percentage right now is already at a solid amount. Is already in a good position. Let me get his numbers back up here. His completion percentage this year is already at a career high. Just imagine if guys like Richie James aren't dropping those passes, it could be the 67, 68 completion percentage, which is a very good place to be as a quarterback. His career average is 63.8 this season, 3% more. He's completing his passes at a career high rate, 66.5, with no talent around him. You give Daniel Jones a legit number 1 receiver, a good tight end. Let's say you keep Saquon. Offensive line continues to build, right? You hope that Evan Neal has a better season next year. He's had some moments this year. He's also had some rookie slumps. So you hope that he next season, similar to Andrew Thomas, can make a jump in year 2 and year 3. You give him another tight end, receivers. You like what you see on the defensive side of the ball. You got the coach. You got the GM. Those 2 things are right. And right now, it really seems like the Giants got the quarterback. Give him weapons, and he can be the guy. I really believe that. And I was wrong about Daniel Jones. I crushed Daniel Jones to start the season. I did not buy into him at all. And as a matter of fact, I was one of those people out there that I thought with them bringing in Tyrod Taylor, I thought Brian Dable and Joe Shane wouldn't be scared to bench Daniel Jones in the season. Like if Daniel Jones starts to struggle early on, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrod Taylor would to come in. Sure enough, Daniel Jones hasn't really struggled. But all the games he's played, there was games where you could look back on past couple seasons with the Giants where you look at the game and Daniel Jones was to blame. All the games this season, Daniel Jones has done his job. The reason they've lost is either because of the receivers dropping passes, defense, or the bottom line is the other team was just more talented, played better. That's kind of it. There's been a couple games like that. Like the Eagles game, Daniel Jones didn't necessarily play bad. I mean, he had 169 yards, a touchdown. He did his job. They got blown out 48-22 because the Eagles are just more talented. That's the bottom line, right? That's just the way it is. And then there's also some other games, like Detroit, where Daniel Jones, did struggle a little bit. He had the 2 interceptions, 341 yards, but the defense, the Lions also put up 31 points. And for an offense that's not going to put up a ton, the defense needs to do a little bit of a better job there. And again, that Washington game that they tied first, that wasn't Daniel Jones' fault. He gave a perfect ball to Darius Slayton. They would have won that game, and sure enough, Darius Slayton drops it. So there's been many times this season. If the Giants had, I will tell you this, if the Giants had a legit receiving core, you can make the argument they would be a 10-win team right now. They would definitely have beaten Washington. So they're 8, what are they right now? They're 8-6-1. So they would have definitely beaten Washington. Giants, let's see. They are 8-6-1. So they would have definitely beaten Washington because that game, Darius Slayton dropped it. So they would have beaten them, which would have got them now to they would be 9-5. They probably would have beat the Vikings. If Richie James catches that ball on third down, who knows what happens that drive? There's a good chance they beat the Vikings 10-4. Hey, you could really make the argument, and this is just more of, and again, I'm not saying Daniel Jones is the greatest quarterback of all time, but the things that he's doing this year with nobody around him is just showing you that what he can do with more talent, and this coaching staff has got him doing all the right things, and he's fit in the system. And you got to give credit where credit's due there. But in terms of, back to the win-loss total, he'd probably be 10-4 there. Again, with the Vikings game, probably would have won. That's probably that would probably be it. I mean, I guess early in the season, that Cowboys game that they lost, that's so early. I'm just talking more recent. They would probably be a 10-4 team right now if they had a legit receiving core. They would be. They would be 10-4. So that, and they would be getting, gearing up to win their 11th game. They would be probably 10-4 right now if they had receivers. So, again, but this also, this is not only credit to Daniel Jones, it's also credit to the coaching staff for what they've taken. Daniel Jones was a mess, and they've turned him into a quality starting quarterback in the NFL, and you can just imagine what he can do with talent around him, and that's what the Giants got to do this offseason. Get talent around him. The Giants are doing really good things. Like they're developing faster than we thought. Like we thought this was going to be a season where the Giants were going to be, 5-6 win team, 5-12, 6-11. I think I predicted 6-11. Going to the offseason, you hope to know about your quarterback. Giants went into the year wanting one answer. What is Daniel Jones? They have gotten the answer. Daniel Jones is the guy. That's how it is. Give him more talent, and he can be a solid quarterback for the New York Giants for a very long time, just based off of what we've seen this season. And you look at some of the numbers. He has the best completion percentage he's had in his career, the most yards he's had in his career. He is tied for the least amount of interceptions he's had in his career. He doesn't turn the ball over nearly enough. He has the most rushing yards he's had in his career. He's using his legs at the highest rate he has. And that's also a credit to Dable, because you saw Dable, how Josh Allen uses his legs. And Daniel Jones, and I'm not comparing them to. Josh Allen's on another level of Daniel Jones. But they use their legs very similar in terms of when they run, how they run, that kind of, I guess, I don't care type of style where they're going to lower their shoulder. They're going to try to run into defenders. They're not really those type of quarterbacks that are going to slide and avoid hits. They're that physical type of quarterback runner. And that's something that Dable has brought over from Buffalo. And you've seen that kind of put into Daniel Jones, the way he uses his legs. So, gotta like what you're seeing from the New York Giants. Bright future there. Bright future really for both teams. And I'll tell you what, as much as Zach Wilson stunk this season, I think we're going to be watching some good quarterback play in New York for a very long time. Whatever the Jets do this offseason, and I think the Giants have gotten their answer with Daniel Jones. He is the guy. So that's what I got for J.J. Watt and Daniel Jones. And now to finish things off today, we'll get into some of the sports tonight. So in the NHL, you got 5 games tonight. Lightning, Canadiens, Devils, Bruins, Red Wings, Penguins, Kraken, Flames, and the Ducks, Golden Knights. In the NBA today, you got the Nets, Hawks in Atlanta. So that should be a good game there. And you also got Pistons, Magic, Wizards, Suns, Lakers, Heat, Bulls, Bucks, Pelicans, Timberwolves, Warriors, Jazz, Kings, Nuggets. And Kentucky opens up their SEC play tonight. Kentucky comes into this game 19th ranked team in the nation. They are 8-3. Missouri is 11-1. The Kentucky's 3.5-point road favorites. Over under set at 148.5. 7 Eastern SEC Network. Looking forward to this game tonight. SEC play opens. Kentucky gets an opportunity to open it up 1-0. Then they'll get Louisville on Saturday, and they are a mess, so you like your chances there. And then next week, this is a big week for Kentucky because you get these two big wins, beat Missouri on the road, beat Louisville, which you should beat either way at home. Louisville's 2-11. They're a mess. Okay. If you win those two games, next week is where two big SEC games come into play. You got LSU on Tuesday, then you have Alabama on Saturday. So they have a lot of the Kentucky coming up here. Then they have Tennessee after that. So out of these two games are two, like, you want to start out SEC play on a high note, you got to do it. Because then after this, three of your next 4 games, LSU, Alabama, Tennessee. Some of the better teams out there. So big game tonight for Kentucky to open up 1-0 on the road in Missouri. And then if they can do that, you feel good about your chances on Saturday against Louisville at home to open up SEC home play against Louisville. Or I apologize. SEC play at home against Missouri. And then, I apologize, they will play, then they'll open up SEC play at home against, Bama, I guess, right? Would it be Bama? Yeah. Because Louisville's ACC. I apologize about that. So they would play LSU at home to open it up. So coming up schedule would be Missouri at home or on the road. Then you get home ACC play against, or SEC, ACC. They'll play Louisville non-conference matchup there. Then they'll get LSU at home. I apologize for that. I mixed up LSU and Louisville. They will be home for their SEC opener a week from, or 6 days from now against LSU. And then they'll be on the road in a hostile environment against Alabama. So, got to like your chances here coming up with Kentucky. They got to find a way to get some of these wins. They've had some disappointing losses so far this year. Got to find a way to pull out some of these victories here to open things up. So, looking forward to it. Should be a good game. Missouri's an interesting team. They're 11-1. You get them at home. They got crushed against Kansas, but they beat Illinois. So they lost to a good team, but they beat a good Illinois team. So they've had an interesting start to the year, but they've taken care of business. They haven't played insane opponents, but they've done their job with the games that they've played. So definitely won't be they're 11-1. So they're definitely a solid team. They're not going to be, not like they're 2-11 or 3-9 or whatever it is. They're 11-1 and they're at home too. So Kentucky looking to start out things good tonight, along with the Nets. So a big basketball night tonight. And then tomorrow, Week 17, will open up in the NFL with Thursday Night Football. So looking forward to that. So that will do it for the podcast here today. Another good one in the book. Stay tuned. I will have my In the Trench with Gangrene Jets mailbag episode up in a little bit. As a matter of fact, I might go ahead and just record that right now. But stay tuned for that. A lot more content coming. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.